Okay, so some of you have never been to a counselor and you're wondering what that is going to be like. And I'm going to tell you a little bit, walk you through how it works. So basically, of course, you make the appointment and you agree upon a time. But before then, you research your counselor or therapist. Those terms are somewhat synonymous. And you decide who the person is and if they fit you and what areas of specialty that they work in and what areas that you need to work on. And it's kind of like I compare it to online dating in the sense that you should have something in common. You should have something that you have affinities for. You should resonate with them. You should like them, actually. So the relationship with the therapist is one of where you like that person, where you get on with that person. I'll use the term chemistry, of course, keeping professional boundaries in mind, but you should really just enjoy being around them. And then, so you're going to talk on the phone. Maybe you'll talk for 15 minutes. This should be free depending on your therapist. And they'll ask you some questions. They'll get an idea of what you are about, what you'd like to work on, or what your issues are going on at that time. And you'll get an idea of who they are, what kind of questions they ask, how they go about things, and they'll explain to you how it works a little bit. So then you make the appointment, and it depends. It could be for 50 minutes, it could be for an hour, it could be for longer. You can meet once a week, which could be considered standard, but you could meet more often. Some take insurance, some don't. So you're meeting, you're going to their office. I assume it's an office. There's going to be chairs to sit down at. There possibly is going to be a couch. They're going to sit on one side and not too far away. You're going to sit on the other side. And basically, they're going to have you fill out some forms and get some general information, some contact information. They're going to have you sign a few things, some releases, some privacy clause. And that's important. You should know that the conversation you have with them is private. There are a few exceptions for things like elder abuse. It depends on your state, the potential for revealing child abuse or the potential for self-harm, imminent self-harm, not, self-harm like cutting, for example, but when a person's in grave danger right at that moment and needs help right away, then there is the possibility where the therapist or counselor might work out that they do need to reveal that to authorities or to someone else. Another example would be imminent bodily harm towards someone else. But again, I don't want to split the legal hairs too fine, and it's all somewhat theoretical, but we all have fantasies about this or that. It's not the same, conversations. There's quite a bit that you will and can talk to your therapist about, and they're going to be very understanding. They're going to understand it's just between you and them, and that's the law. So in that sense, I don't want to compare it to a relationship like with a priest or like with a lawyer-client privilege, but there is that privacy, that confidentiality. They won't reveal your name, and they won't, even if you see them out in public, and you'll negotiate that, but you'll figure out a way where, of course, they would never reveal that you see them. That's private, unless you say it's okay and you work out, hey, here's how we're going to do it if I ever see you in private. And oftentimes the rule of thumb for a therapist would be they're going to wait until you acknowledge them. And if you nod at them, they may or may not nod back. If you say hello to them, they may or may not say hello back. It's up to the therapist and you to work that out and to what the therapist thinks matters. But confidentiality and privacy matters so much. And much of what they do hinges on that. So, okay, now you're in the room and you're going to talk to them. You're going to reveal some of your concerns. And depending on the therapist, depending on what modality, what theories they're using, this may be a thing where they have certain kinds of ways of dealing with your problem, certain practices. It might be just talking. It might be strengths-based, and they're looking for positive things in your life. They may or may not go out into the metaphorical backyard and dig up the dinosaur bones back there, but that might also be something they do. Traditionally, the talking cure for Western mental health care comes from the Freud and post-Freudians, and the idea would be to Go into the subconscious, talk about dreams, talk about these sorts of things. And we don't necessarily always do that, but there's the flexibility there depending on your therapist, who they are and what they're about, to talk about lots of things. Childhood might be something you talk about. Relationships might be something you talk about. Grief, if you've had a recent loss, might be something you talk about. But you could talk about lots of other things in your life. And I guess that's how I see it, is that this is, in some senses, like when you see a professional who is helping you with something, when you see someone who gives you a massage, or when you see a physical therapist, or when you see a doctor, you're working on the issues at hand, and it can be to help you feel better for something that is bothering you. It can also be a way of just taking good care of yourself. So it feels good. I know this might sound laughable to somebody, but I've always looked forward to having someone to talk to. And if I've got an hour session every Tuesday at noon, for example, and I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to talk to my person then. That's very important. I'm going to save this thing that maybe I would burden someone else with. I don't necessarily mean it's a burden, but this is a person, my therapist is, who is very interested. They really do care. This is what they're about. It gives them a great deal of satisfaction to help you, to listen to you. And honestly, as a therapist, it's a great privilege when people share with me. And the sharing can be just how their day is going. The sharing with me can be the history of their relationships or their family. It can be if they're feeling depression, if they're feeling anxiety, and they're sharing that with me. I feel very privileged to have them have that trust in me and for them to share that with me. And so basically, yeah, you're going to talk. There are other kinds of therapies where you do other things, like EMDR. You talk and you hold these paddles, and it's a complicated theory, and it's a very interesting modality. But for the most part, the common thing that you're going to do is you're going to talk. You're going to connect. You're going to share. And what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about the stuff that you want to talk about. And hopefully your therapist, if there's something you don't want to talk about, they're going to find creative ways to either work around that, to engage that in a way that feels comfortable, to give you the tools so that you feel like you can talk about it. They're going to be there with you every step of the way so that you feel supported. It's all about connection. I think that's the most important thing. And maybe that is my main claim here, that no matter how the therapist goes about with their theory or their ways of practicing, I think it's the connection between you and the therapist. It's a human connection, and I believe human beings need to be connected, need to feel connected. And maybe at another time in human history, the connection might have been done another way, with kin or ritual or ceremony or elders or mentors. And today, I take that vow to be like that, like a mentor, like kin, possibly like an elder, and to work with you and to hold space and to hold you in the metaphorical way, which is you will feel seen, you will feel heard, hopefully you will feel understood.